The first Christmas that I experienced in Prasanthi was in 1988. The ashram, as you can imagine, was a very, very different place at that time. And of course, the Sai Kulwant Hall, which is just so magnificent today, was well. Basically, the Sai Kulwant Hall didn't exist. The mandir as such existed, but no, the Christmases were very special times. And I brought from New Zealand groups of about 40. I did that for a number of years over the Christmas time. And they were really very, blessed times. And I can certainly remember, the Christmas mornings with the Naga Sankirtans, which of course were special for us because, they involved candles this time and carrying candles around the normal route for the Naga Sankirtan, which was very beautiful and special. And when we would come back to the mandir, and remember that it was basically just the mandir, not the great edifice, which is now the Sai Kulwant Hall. So we would come there and we would gather with our candles underneath or in front of the mandir. And, I can remember the beautiful hush that would go over the crowd. And we knew that Swami would come out from, the silver doors, which are really above the mandir and still currently there. And he would come out in his white gown, typically. And it was really very special to see him like that, and just the stillness in the crowd, or in the devotees. Let's not a crowd, but the devotees, was really something very special. Of course, because Christmas is in great part a celebration for Westerners. So Westerners on Christmas Day were given special treatment, which was rather nice. We were given a special place, in which to gather together, and the morning darshans were lovely. And I can remember that Father Christmases would run around and give sweets, etc., which was just really fun. And particularly, it just seemed to have a real substance to it. Because in the Western world now, Christmas doesn't mean very much. It's very much a commercial activity, and even just the thought of Jesus for many people just doesn't exist anymore, which is a great pity. So coming to Prasanthi and experiencing that with Swami was just lovely. And in the afternoons and evenings, of course, we would go to the Purna Chandra, because at that time no Sai Kulwant Hall, so all the gathering was done in the Purna Chandra. So we would watch, the play that was done, etc., and obviously have Swami's Christmas discourse, and it just made it made the celebration of Christmas really special for us. It was a very, very nice time.
I think what you mentioned is so true, in the sense that a lot of people feel that here they can feel the true spirit of Christmas.
It's just, the sad aspect is that, in the Western world, even the concept of God is now something which is just not accepted. If you talk about Christmas and you say, and you ask people, so what's Christmas about? Many of them really wouldn't have much of a clue, and I think that that's just such a travesty. And it is so lovely that with Swami, he celebrates all these major religious festivals, and it's just so nice that that Christmas obviously is one of those. And so you're absolutely right. Functions here at Prasanthi are really special.
And I guess because it is a place where you find people from all over and from all faiths gather, you see that different people, they might have come to Prasanthi for the first time, but they say, I have come home. I have heard Christians saying that, I want to be celebrating Christmas in my true home.
I totally agree with you. I've just felt really at peace here, and very very reluctant to go, I might say, but those of us who have duties and a life in the Western world, we come here for a short time, and we drink as much as we possibly can, and we take that back home with us and try and share that. But you're absolutely right. This does feel like home, and you mentioned the many different people who come here, and the sense of brotherhood and sisterhood is really beautiful. And that there is no friction or antagonism. There's just real love there, which is just, that's just Swami. But he really does just bring people together, and they begin to understand that actually they're all children of the one God, which is just, it is such a positive sound. And my goodness, let's hope that begins to, spread out and throughout the world. I'm sure that it will do.
Yeah, so some ways it is kind of a spiritual capital for people belonging to all faiths.
Yes, I'd be more positive about that. I think it is the spiritual capital. If it doesn't feel like that now because it's early days, I have absolutely no doubt that in the future it will be. And Swami has made that very clear. So I think we have to be really positive that will be the case. This particular physical place, the spiritual energy here is just something stunning. And I'm sure that Swami has said that there's nowhere else in the world, perhaps in the universe, where the spiritual energy is as potent and as powerful as it is here. Which is why, of course, it's, from my own perspective, it's important and very valuable to come back and to do that, on a regular basis, if one can.
And you've been doing that for years. You came to Prasanthi perhaps in the 80s, right?
I did, and it was an unusual experience, because for a long time, since the age of about 20, I had been following a particular organisation in New Zealand called the School of Philosophy, which had introduced me to essentially the Indian spiritual teachings. So we were introduced to the Gita, the Upanishads, the Ramayana, Mahabharata. We were introduced to Sanskrit, which was, extraordinarily valuable. And I grew to absolutely love the ancient Indian scriptures. In fact, it's a real joy for me now even to pick up the Upanishads. Obviously, it's in English rather than in the original Sanskrit, but it's an absolute joy for me to do so. But I left that organization after a while, and largely not that the teaching wasn't correct, because the teaching was very correct. It was basically jnana marga. It was the path of knowledge. But it had, from my perspective, it lacked one thing, which I found here, and that's love, basically. But when I came here, and when you ask many people, what brought you to Swami, I think many men, if they're being truthful about it, would say, actually, it was a woman who brought me here. And in my case, it was my mother. She was bringing a group of about 40 to Prasanthi, and I was not a devotee at that time at all. And she said to me, she called me Bernie, which is very nice. And she said, Bernie, why don't you come with the group? And you can spend a few days at the ashram, just see it, and then you can leave and trip around India, and that was my intention. But what at the time was a strange set of circumstances, but I know that it was absolutely Swami's Leela now. I got talking to some academics in Swami's institute, the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, specifically the Department of Physics. And when I went there, they showed enormous interest in me and my research. And that was Swami's way of just drawing me in. These lovely professors at the Institute said, "Oh, you must give our students a seminar." And it was on the kind of research that I was doing. And I said, "Okay, so fine." And they said, "Oh, but you must have an interview with the Vice Chancellor." And so I duly went up to that magnificent building on the hill. I'm not sure what you people call it, but the administration building probably. And got in to sit in front of the Vice Chancellor, who greeted me and then asked me the very question which I did not want to be asked, which was, "How long have you been a devotee?" To which I basically had to mumble and say, "Well, really, I've just arrived here." And his face kind of dropped. But I said, "I have been studying the teachings of the Shankaracharya for about 20 to 25 years." And his face lit up. And I don't remember which Vice Chancellor it was, but his face lit up. "Oh, that's very good," he said. And then he said, "Swami has just recently had the boys give a play on the Shankaracharya." Now, that was really important to me because what it said to me was actually Swami and what I had been receiving in this previous environment, that those two were the same. And over a period of time, I gave one seminar on that year. And then, and they said, "Well, you must come back." And of course, this is Swami's Leela. But I came back quite a number of years and was really fortunate to give short courses to Swami's students. Obviously, I gave one seminar in the first year, and then subsequently gave longer courses. And then, of course, Swami's permission had to be received to actually do that. And I understood that Swami said yes. But one aspect of that was that I got to sit on the veranda of the mandir. What a blessing that was, because I was then able to sit amongst the students and the staff and see Swami and observe him at very close physical quarters. And I still remember now, I was able to sit in the mandir for the bhajans, and Swami would be on his throne, sort of in this space there, and very close. And I think how extraordinarily fortunate I was to be able to do that. It was a very, very blessed time. But coming back year after year, I brought a number of groups of basically fairly mixed ages to Swami. But then in New Zealand, I took up the role of the youth convener. We called it the youth convener. And so I brought groups of young people to Swami, and that was really special. We on one year, and this was a group of perhaps about 25 youngsters, and in order to prepare for the pilgrimage to Prasanthi, I asked these lovely young people. I said, "You need to prepare spiritually for that." And so, and I was quite tough in those days. And I said, and in order to do that, what I want you to do is, I want you to come to a study circle every week, and we will study Swami's Summer Showers 1990, which for me was such an important set of discourses, because it laid out the framework for the body, the senses, the mind, the intellect, Atma, and it laid it all out. And so the students, these young youth, went through an entire year of studying Summer Showers 1990, and we almost finished that before we left for our pilgrimage to Prasanthi. And Swami was very generous to us. I think we got about 4 interviews that year. And during that time, Swami would ask us questions about Summer Showers 1990. He knew that we had been studying that. Interviews with Swami, obviously they are a very special time. They're a very special time. He seemed to so enjoy the company of these young people, and he was forever cracking jokes, and we would laugh, uproariously, and then he'd say, "Shh, shh, shh, the devotees will hear. Shh, be quiet." And then he'd say something else, and we'd be in fits of laughter again. But having said in fits of laughter, he was telling us about his teachings, which was extremely special. And as the leader of the group, he would ask me and questions, and I would have a conversation with him. And he asked me at one point. He said, "So what do you do?" And I said, "Swami, teacher." And he then said, "How many kinds of teachers are there?" And I paused and said, "Swami, I don't know." And he said, 3. And then he used those magical words, inspire, explain, complain. And he said, inspire, that's the very best. Explain, that's okay. Never complain. Never complain. And over the years, because I taught at the University of Auckland in New Zealand for nearly 40 years. And those 3 words, inspire, explain, complain, were always very strongly in mind, and obviously the goal, to inspire the students. And I think after some time, because of course, Swami says these things, he says these words, and over a long period of time, you ruminate over them. I think he calls it mananam. You think about it and you say, what does this really mean? What does this really mean? Well, it turned out to mean a great deal for me. And I think at the end of the career that I had at the University of Auckland, I think I was inspiring the students, but I also made sure that, I interacted with them with love, basically. I wouldn't have called it that, but I knew that that's what it was. But Swami allowed us to ask questions. I can remember I asked him, what's the difference between bookish knowledge and practical knowledge? And he gave me a really beautiful answer. He said, well, it's a bit like, white sand and sugar that's white. And they both look the same. But it's only when you taste the sugar that you have an experience of sweetness. And he said, that's practical. That's practical knowledge. That's what you experience when you put something into practice. And of course, you realize, how can you explain that to anybody? If you've never tasted sugar and realized that it's sweet, how could you ever, explain that? But we just had beautiful interactions, with Swami. Yes, he manifested all sorts of, objects for a number of the students. He, for one of the boys, the boy had a silver ring, and Swami took that and then turned it into a gold one. We're all very jealous, as one is. But he was so gentle with us, is the way that I would describe it. He was so gentle with us. We had interviews that seemed to go on for about an hour. That was a long time, It was a long, long time. But they were very special times. I got to, yes, I'll mention something else. with one of the groups that we brought, we spent a period of time here, and then Swami went off to Vrindavan, Whitefield. And we were fortunate to follow him. And fortunately, Swami had actually organized for accommodation for us, because, you think about, what am I going to do when I get to Whitefield? Where will these young people stay? And Swami had organized the accommodation for us, which just blew us away. But I can remember sitting in the darshan and being quite close to the front line. And it was a cold morning. And Swami was walking past, and he looked at me and he said, "Very cold." And I said, "Yes, Swami, very cold." And then he said some magic words. He said, "I am simple. I am simple." And those are words that stuck with me for a long, long time. I wondered what he meant at the time. What they mean now to me is that he is simple and his teachings are very simple. We tend to complicate them. But if you look at the heart of his teachings, you say, they're so simple. And on one occasion, Swami came up, and, I was obviously sitting cross-legged, basically as you do. And he comes up and he stands on my legs. He's that close. And, and I'm now looking up at him like this, because his face is right up there. And he asked me the question, "What do you do?" And I said, "Teacher, Swami." And he said, "What do you teach?" "Electrical engineering, Swami." And then he asked me the question, which, I probably didn't answer appropriately, but actually I wouldn't give a different answer. He said, "What is electrical?" And I answered, "Swami, I don't know." And he turned to his students and the staff around him and said, "Look at this." And to be honest, even now, I don't think I would give a different answer, because do I know what electrical is? I have no idea. But what transpired after that, over about a period of 10 minutes, while I'm looking up at him like this, is he gave me a detailed lesson on the structure of the atom, the protons and the neutrons and the electrons and how they all work. And he then went on to say, everything is electrical. And I can remember him saying so clearly, fingernails, even the fingernails are electrical. Now, why did he give me a lesson on the the physics of the atom? I have no idea, and one doesn't know what Swami's doing, and I realize now one does not know what he's doing. But it was a very glorious interaction, and I count myself as extraordinarily fortunate. Now there was on a different trip, and I was there for some time, and things were not going well, and I was having a difficult time, and I just one morning I thought to myself, "Swami, I know you're not going to speak to me, and that's fine." And it brings tears to my eyes actually now. But I said to him, "It would be so nice if you smiled at me." And in the morning for the early morning bhajans, and again I could sit amongst the boys, and I was about 1.5 meters away from, he was sitting on the chair, on his chair. And I turned and looked at him, and he looked at me, and he gave me the most beautiful smile that I have ever seen. And obviously monkey mind plays with that and says, "Was he smiling at you?" "No, he surely not." "No, he was smiling at one of the boys. Must have been." Well, at the end of the bhajan, 6 of the boys came up to me and said, Swami gave you a very beautiful smile. Did that remove all doubt? Now, I mean, clearly that tells me about, his omniscience, his omnipresence. He knew what I had thought. I had hoped for just a simple smile. He didn't give me a simple smile. It was the most beautiful smile I have ever seen, and it fills my heart now with such joy just to think about that. What a blessing that was, an absolute blessing.
Absolutely, in the sense that, even a slightest thought, he responds to. And I think whenever we have any thought that is pure and that is something which will take us closer to him, he's waiting to respond to such requests.
He's waiting to respond. Now, I'd have to say that it took me many years for me to be absolutely convinced that he is Purushottama. He is the Supreme. In the early days, you see things and you think, how do I explain all this? But now I'm just totally convinced that he is who he says he is. And I feel him now very much guiding me. I mean, I now no longer say, oh, that was an interesting coincidence. No, that was just Swami. There are no coincidences, And when you come to Prasanthi, the so-called coincidences happen even more frequently. This is a powerful place, and things just are happening all the time. And after a while, you just say, Swami, I just surrender to you. I have no idea what you're doing with this being, but please carry on doing it. It is so delightful.
As you mentioned, it took years for you to believe with all your heart, mind, and soul that he is the supreme divine principle. So was that a gradual process, or were there certain instances that happened which really kind of shook you and instilled this in you solidly?
I think I'd have to say that it's a gradual process for me. I know that there are some who, experience a transformation very, very quickly. For me, it's been a gradual process. I drink in his teachings. His teachings are very, very special to me. And I see the very, very important linkage between the Gita and now what Swami is doing. And for me, it's, Sanatana Dharma 1.0 is Bhagavad Gita. And all of Swami's teachings are now Sanatana Dharma 2.0. They seem to be expanding the Gita in a beautiful way and making it real for devotees and for people of these times. I don't read the Bhagavad Gita in the original Sanskrit. Unfortunately, I don't have that opportunity. But I do read a beautiful English translation of it. And in fact, for quite some period of time, every day I would just take a chapter and read it. And in fact, my practice is not just to read it, but I actually read it out loud. Now, the reason that I do that is because for me, the Gita is a song, and it sings when you read it out loud. If you read it nicely, it's so beautiful. And I find the words so powerful. Now, do I understand them in depth? No. But nonetheless, they have a huge impact, in my heart. And then you find that Swami will then take parts of the Bhagavad Gita in various discourses and tease it out and help one to understand what Lord Krishna was saying and what he was saying, because of course he's Lord Krishna. I do find the Bhagavad Gita a very powerful teaching. And, my encouragement is devotees should engage with the Bhagavad Gita because it is such a beautiful song. And even if you feel that you don't understand it, it impacts your heart. I know that Swami has asked his devotees to memorize chapter 12, the chapter 12 on Bhakti Yoga. And I've done that, the English translation. And that's been a very powerful experience because, of course, it's different to having read the Bhagavad Gita and say, oh, it's in a book, I've got it here. But when it's inside, now it's immediately available to you when a situation occurs which you don't quite know how to handle, and it comes immediately to the fore. I know that Swami's asked his devotees to memorize chapter 12 and also a number of shlokas in chapter 2. And he's placed, so I'm told that he's placed similar emphasis on those sections in chapter 2 as chapter 12. And I find those very, very powerful. I've gone through, in 1984, I think, Swami gave about 34 discourses on the Bhagavad Gita. And I have gone through those in enormous detail. In fact, I handwrite them out. That's my way of trying to connect with them. I handwrite them out. And that has just been so, illuminating for me. His teaching just expands and expands and expands, But having said, his teaching inspires me. I love the bhajan. Absolutely love the bhajan.
Lovely. I mean, of course, as Swami says, the karma, bhakti, jnana, they are all not different compartments, or they are not isolated from each other.
Yeah. And that is now my real experience, is that those three paths, jnana, karma, and bhakti, they are actually one. They may at the beginning seem to have a slightly different emphasis, but you realize they all come together. I mean, you can't be a bhakti, a yoga devotee, if you're not doing work. And if you're not doing work for Swami, it doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. And if you're not trying to understand what he means by Advaita, because bhakti yoga is not duality. It is not Dvaita. Bhakti yoga is Advaita. Though it takes a long time to realize that it is Advaita, it is not Dvaita, it is not duality. And then you realize, look, these different paths, they may look different, but they are not different. They're just one and the same. And I think that Swami's he's just molded them together. He's melted them together in a really beautiful way, and I think that it just makes it so powerful, so powerful.
Is there any particular message which is very close to your heart and which, when you implemented, you discovered the immensity of the message and the practical applicability, and which transformed the way you worked in your professional life or in your social life? I know there will be many examples, but maybe one or two you can share with us.
Yes. And again, it's a progression. In the early years when I was teaching at the university, it became very obvious to me that teaching the students was a side issue. It was just a reason for me to be where I was. But I found myself simply helping troubled students, and extending to them, an open office and a welcome, and I learned after the years or over the years, students are often fairly frightened to knock on the door of an academic's office and go in. And if they plucked up the courage to do that, I would say to them, "Oh, it is so nice to see you. Please come and sit and let us talk." Many students would relate to me in a very personal way. How did I learn to do that? It was through Swami. Many academics can actually be quite cold, they're more, they kind of think about themselves as, I'm an expert in this, and people should know that I'm an expert. Well, I never pretended to be an expert, and I certainly wasn't. But I did learn to love the students, and they related to that very, very strongly. So that aspect of love was really important. I realized this is such a special opportunity to go back to Him. Swami says everything in creation wants to go back to the Lord. Everything in creation wants to go back to the Lord. And every one of us needs to make that decision. It must eventually happen. Why not do it now? And Swami says that. He says, why wait for more births of happiness, sadness? Why do that? Why not make the effort now to go back to Him? And for me now, that's what just seems so important now, is to make that effort. Now, the other aspect is, and he makes it really clear. I mean, there's that beautiful shloka in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 12. But those for whom I am the goal supreme, who do all work renouncing self to me, and meditate on me with single-hearted devotion, these will I swiftly rescue from the cycle of birth and death to fullness of eternal life in me. That tells me you can't do it on your own. And in fact, He's the one who will pick you up. But you have to be devoted to Him, and that, just that one shloka, and I realize it's probably not a perfect translation, but it means a lot to me. Those for whom I am the goal supreme, who do all work renouncing self to me, and meditate on me with single-hearted devotion, these will I swiftly rescue, not slowly, swiftly rescue from the cycle of birth and death to fullness of eternal life in me. That's such a powerful message for me.
Earlier you mentioned how, practicing love in your professional life as a teacher came into you naturally as you started living by Swami's teachings. And when I think of it, what pulled you to Swami also was love, because you were into Indian culture and you were not new to Indian philosophy.
Correct,
and Swami's
yes.
teaching. But
Correct.
what really caught your heart and captured your heart was this aspect of love, that wetness of love. And I think that probably enriched your profession, and I'm sure it would have encompassed everything that you did in life.
It must do. I mean, I sometimes give well, they say speeches, and I say no, it's just a sharing, amongst the devotees, and I say to them, don't use the words, Swami's devotees. The whole world are His children, and you mustn't reserve the love just for His devotees. You must realize that the whole world is His children, and that includes the animals and the whatever, every sentient being. It's all part of him, and little by little, you need to learn to share that love with people. Now, they will not understand what you are doing, but when you smile, they smile back, and you know that it touches them. And they may not understand why it's touched them, but you know at that instant when you've smiled that there's a connection heart to heart. When this body passes, which it doubtless will, if people can say about this being, he was kind, I can think of no better epithet, than that. He was kind. What does Swami said? If you want to be a member of mankind, you should learn to be kind. That's always been a very powerful statement for me. And kindness is so simple. It doesn't take any effort, and it's so rewarding. It's just so rewarding. So no, I could I could go on and on.
It's so interesting. Swami told you that I am simple, and you have discovered the profundity of that simplicity in his teachings, and also the joy.
Oh, the joy
of relishing that and replicating that in real life.
Absolutely. There is real joy, in that. When you touch another person's heart, and as during this stay here, one of the things that I make a point of doing is there are lovely Sevadal everywhere who are just ensuring that the place runs smoothly, that it's disciplined, that it's exactly the way that Swami would like it to be. And I make a point of smiling, and I make a point of really connecting with each one, and trying to, not saying anything, because I don't say anything. Obviously, you say Sai Ram, but connecting with them, so that they know you've connected with them. And I find that after a while, because of course you meet them day after day because they're doing the same, day after day. And after a while, you see them look forward to when you arrive, because they like that smile and they like that connection. As I, and it happens to me now as I go into Omkar and Suprabhatam in the morning, whereas in the early days it would be just Sai Ram, Sai Ram. Now the Sevadal are saying, Sai Ram, good morning, sir. It's very nice. What does that tell me? A connection's been made. That helps them. Well, it helps both of us actually. But it helps them. They're doing important work, and for them to realize that people know what they're doing, appreciate what they're doing, and are greeting them as Atma, really, are greeting them as a fellow, a brother in this case, because of course we don't meet the women's Sevadal. But and it's so lovely because predominantly the Sevadal are those good folk who have been born in India and so have had the opportunity to serve in the ashram, this body here is a white person, but the interaction is beautiful, but making the effort, I think, is really important. A smile costs nothing.
So beautiful. As you were saying this, the one word that was ringing in my heart was Prematma Swarupalara, which Swami used to use to address all the devotees, that everybody is an embodiment of love. Swami used to address all of us. And, by the simple act of a smile coming from the heart, enables you to experience.
You absolutely experience. I mean, Sai Ram said coldly, is cold. It's simply cold, and Sai Ram is supposed to be a greeting to the Atma, to the supreme absolute. I bow, and I greet you. And if we can try and do that, I mean, I remember I watch lots and lots of videos of, anything involved with Swami. I watch lots of, sharings of different people, most of them produced by you good people at Radio Sai. It's just, gold. But I can remember, one occasion where people know that, or may know that, very often, year after year, Swami would go to Kodaikanal, and he would take a group of very fortunate students, and he'd take a group of very fortunate, adults, seniors. On one occasion, one of the senior people asked him a question, which I thought was a very important question. Swami, how do we know that we are growing spiritually? And Swami's answer, I thought, was really beautiful. If every day you come to love more people more deeply, then you're growing spiritually. Bijou, is that simple? It is so simple, and just simply, because before we come to Swami, we meet people as just bodies, basically, and they're separate to us. And, they have different natures, and some of them we like and some of them we don't. But then to begin to realize, no, that's just an outer covering. It's completely irrelevant. It has no value whatsoever. And if you can connect with the heart, then you've connected with that person, and connecting with the heart, you're not interested in, their vasanas or whatever, it's irrelevant, they're Atma, they're Atma. And for me, just I was going to say this concept of Atma, but Atma is just so important. Atma is everything. All of this is just, it's just unreal, but we still get caught up in it. And, do I spend my days in bliss? No. No. Do I go through difficult times? All the time. Do I make mistakes? All the time, But, with Swami's, with Swami's love, and, I feel him in here now. And Swami actually says, I can remember on one occasion he had some boys in the mandir, and he asked them, where is God? And they immediately said, Swami, God is in here. And Swami said, you need to understand that for you to be able to answer that, and so quickly, shows considerable spiritual development. Because for many people, they would be running around in their head thinking, well, what's the right answer that I should give? But for the boys to be able to say, Swami, you're in here. You're nowhere else. You're in here. And I don't believe anything else. I believe you in here. No, you're not in heaven. Heaven's a temporary bus stop. It's a temporary sojourn. And then you come back to birth and death. But Swami's in here, and if you can really connect with that, and if you can connect with that love, because in here he's just love. He's just love. Obviously there are times, and there have been times when in here he's corrected me so strongly. And for a whole day or so, I think, oh, Swami, that was so strong, and then he softens it and he says, past is past, forget, but it's a very beautiful journey. It's a very beautiful journey.
I think, as you said, if everyone can feel them, God within, solidly, and lead their lives with that feeling constantly erupting in their thoughts and their actions. And I think that is what is kingdom of heaven. That is, we are then in the kingdom of heaven.
I think we are. I mean, one of the aspects in this particular trip to Prasanthi, one of the aspects that has been very strongly in mind and heart is you need to become empty. You need to become empty. Only when you become empty inside can he then fill that space. And so what does become empty mean? For me, it means try and stop the chatter inside and just be quiet. Now, obviously, the mind is jumping up and down, but just little by little, just become the witness, and just try and empty of all the stuff that one runs around with, and all the ideas that one has too. Just try and let them go, so that you're just empty now. This aspect of just try and become empty seems so important.
And I think, as you mentioned, becoming empty, I cannot but think of the flute.
Yes.
And I think all our journey is to become that hollow, so that his love flows through. And I think that is what Prasanthi does to all of us. And that is the reason why you find love becoming more spontaneous.
I think that word spontaneous, it's a natural response. I've always had a deep love for Krishna. Krishna has always meant something very special, and so not surprisingly, the Bhagavad Gita has always meant something very special. Only recently have I read Swami's Ramakatha, and oh boy, have I loved that. I just, I read the Ramayana a long time ago, but Swami's telling of the Rama story, it is so beautiful, and I realized that if devotees would love to, want to really understand the breadth and the depth of his teachings, for me, they need to have a real exposure and love for Rama, because that story is so beautiful, and it tells you so much about how you should live your life, and there's such teaching there. The next, of course, is Lord Krishna and the Gita, because that's just so special. And now, of course, Swami's teachings, and those three for me complete the picture. For a long time, I didn't connect with Rama at all. Now I just have a deep love for Rama, and what Lord Rama did, and the examples that he gave all the way through are just so powerful. And they're so practical. They're just so practical. And this whole aspect of what does following the Dharma actually mean? Well, he kind of spells it out on a day-to-day basis, and little by little, I think one learns to try and follow that. But those are powerful messages. But I have to say, I love the Upanishads, the Isha Upanishad. I love the Isha Upanishad. It just brings tears to my eyes. It's powerful.
Beautiful. Swami once had mentioned, while Ramo Vigrahan Dharma, Rama is the embodiment of Dharma, Sathya and Dharma is represented by Rama, and Shanti and Prema is represented by Krishna. And Swami here is Satya, Dharma, Shanti, Prema, all in one.
It's all in one.
All in one.
That's a beautiful way of putting it, actually. It's all one. It's just, Bijou, it is just such an amazing journey that we have found ourselves on. And we shouldn't take it for granted. I often think, and I kind of reflect, those who are physically separate from Prasanthi, I almost think that they have an easier time, particularly when Swami was here in his physical form, because Swami was such a good actor. He played the part of man so amazingly well, and then he'd do something which blew your mind. But much of the time he just played the part of a human being. Would that be so difficult to constantly remember, this is Purushottama. This is not an ordinary man. This is Purushottama. And I'm sure that many would often have forgotten that, so I think that sometimes for those who were physically close to him, they might have had a tougher journey, than those who kind of were physically distant and would come for a period of time and then take the honey and go back. Not that those people here don't take the honey. I'm sure that they do. But that was our experience. The devotees from far away.
Absolutely. I think, when you had the form, so there was the charm of the form, but at the same time, there was the element of mystery of the form.
The mystery. I mean, I would watch Swami and what he did, and I could never understand anything of what he did. He frankly, in the early days, he scared me. And I don't know whether that's an experience that some devotees have. I wish I could go back to those times, because I would not be scared of him now. Swami himself says, he looks at his devotees, and he says, my heart is filled with love for them. And I realize now that was what was happening in darshan. Did I realize that? No, not at the time. I realize it now, and I watch videos of darshans, as many of us do, and you realize, can't you see the love there? Can't you see it just pouring out? And it does, it does. But of course, he had to present, particularly in darshan, a certain perspective. If you saw him in the interview room, completely different. His students would have seen him completely different. And so you saw the many sides of Swami. And yes, for me in the early days, particularly when I was sitting on the veranda, and the thought would go in the mind, will he point to me one day and say, "You, out! What are you doing here?" But I realize now, he wanted me there. He wanted me there, but it took a long time to realize that. That was his leela. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but that was his leela.
I think whatever he gave us, it was not because we deserved anything, because I don't think we ever deserved even 1/1,000,000th of what he gave us.
I think that's right.
But it was just his love, unconditional love, love that has no boundaries, and he just showered it, and we still continue to experience that love when we connect with him. And I think our journey also should be to become that love.
I just absolutely. If we can just, you went back. You mentioned the flute. If you can be like the flute, and if you can sing beautiful, if you can produce beautiful music, yes. Because that's what a flute does. It produces enchanting sounds, enchanting sounds. It doesn't matter if somebody, says, "I'm an atheist." Very good. So be it. But they'll respond to love. They'll respond to love. I mean, there's one of the services that I do is in New Zealand I work for the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard saves people at sea, out at sea. When they get into trouble, it makes sure that they stay alive. And one of the lovely devotees whom I work with, she's a teacher, or used to be a teacher, but she's such a beautiful soul. And, there'd be many occasions when she was in the classroom and the classroom was disruptive. And the students would say, "Miss, show your angry face." And she would respond to them, "I just don't know how."
Wow.
Now, does she think of herself as a spiritual person? No. Do I think of her as a spiritual person? Oh my goodness, yes. And that particular soul, she's just sweetness. I've seen her in difficult situations. Does she ever respond with anger? Never. Does she ever respond with a nasty response? Never. And I think there are souls like this. They don't think of themselves as spiritual, but they truly are spiritual. And I'm sure the world is there are so many people like that, and they're just so ripe for Swami to pick them up and say, "Come now into my fold, because it's time for you," and that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important not to try and, to use the expression, push Swami down people's throats, because I think that can turn them away. But if they can look at you and look at your life and say, "There's something about your life that I like," I think that's powerful.
And I think that's the biggest tribute that we can give to Swami, our homage to Swami, when someone looks at us and says that there is something special in this person, and it has got something to do with love. Because spirituality, as Swami says, is spirit of love.
It's spirit of love.
If you look at the message of Christmas also, it is nothing but love.
It absolutely is. In the early days, my family was very devoted Catholics. But religion as it's practiced now, oh my goodness, it seems to be so far away from the teachings of Jesus. And for me now, I think about the life of Jesus and what he did towards the end of his life. He knew what was going to happen. He knew that he was going to, that this body was going to die. He knew that it was going to die most painfully. Swami says that before he was put on the cross, he was beaten and punished for 8 days. Swami said not a single part of his body wasn't injured. And no food, no water for 8 days. And yet he allowed himself to go through that agony. And you say, what was the message that he gave mankind? Well, one very powerful message: I'm not the body. And just the way that he died and the love that permeated through his life, no wonder it's lasted for 2,000 odd years. What a powerful message. Unfortunately, now people doubt whether he even existed, which is extraordinary. Because there's plenty of historical evidence that, of course, Jesus lived. But his message is so powerful. And obviously at Christmas time, we celebrate his birth. And you think, my goodness, what a being. I mean, we know that, that the journey that he went through, I am in the light, the light is in me. I am the light. That spiritual journey that he went through. My goodness, what a message! But I think many people just miss the message. If they went back to the Bible and and the Gospels of Mark and John and etc. and Luke, and read the words of Jesus, they would be really touched. I reflect upon Jesus, and I just find it hard not to cry, not to weep, because the example that he gave was so powerful, and the conviction, his love for the Lord, unbelievable.